say thank you people. So can you, okay, it works. So yeah, as I said, Robert said, my name is Andrés Valencia Téllez. I come from the south of Spain, and I'm actually a software engineer. I'm what you would call like a graphics programmer. And like in a, like showcase of artists, like you guys might be thinking like, what's a programmer doing here? What's a software engineer doing here? So I'm gonna try to answer that question. But let's first like dive a little bit into my background, what I did like a few years ago. So I'm actually like a game programmer or like graphics programmer, but background is in video game development. And I studied back in Spain, where I'm from. And like for like 3 years now, I work in like many different projects, both as a like developer, freelancer. This was one of the first ones that I did with some people in the Netherlands called Metrical Plus, which is again completely driven by infographics, in which like all the aesthetics in the world, like all the elements, were driven by the player input, right? So everything was reactive to what you were doing in the screen. So basically, like walking back and forth would change something in the scene. And that kind of, I mean, I knew the guys from before, but like that kind of idea of like input-driven design have always stick with me. And I've always find it so fascinating that, like we have this multimedia interactive possibilities these days, and we're still watching videos, and it's like, why the hell are we doing that? I think we should be trying to, push the boundaries of what a computer can do a little bit more. And as I said, I'm a software engineer. I work for this company called Confetti in San Diego as a freelancer, and we did something called The Forge, which is a rendering framework, which has been used in like many different like titles that are available out there, like Hades from this guy's, I don't really remember the name, but it's a kind of like a roguelike game on Steam. Stormland is like an Oculus game for like from the people of Insomniac. So it really makes me happy that some code that I write like maybe 2 years ago now it's being like played on someone PS5, right? Or PS4, I should say. But that's great. I mean, cool stuff. You do things with code. It's really interesting. But what the F is a graphics programmer? This is a little bit of also like a kind of educative talk, because I'm trying to also, I've met like so many people that I've told them I'm a graphics programmer. Like, what? So you use Illustrator? It's like, well, kind of a program illustrator, but I'm gonna try to explain a little bit what is that a little bit more. So what I would say a graphics programmer is a graphics programmer is a software engineer specialized in algorithms related to visual representation. This is like a really broad definition of it. It's by a really famous guy in the industry, myself. No, I'm just kidding. Because it's really hard to define it. It actually encompasses like a lot of different fields, from like offline rendering, like CG, from Toy Story movies, to what you will have like in a browser with like HTML and text engine, to what you would have in a game. So it's a little bit a broad field. But I think we all started with this guy called John Whitney. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. If you aren't, like, this guy's amazing. Basically, I would say, is the father of computer graphics. He started working in the 40s and the 50s in the US, doing slit scan animations. Basically, he found out that like if rotated stuff in a certain way, it created like really interesting visuals, and went from there on. This one on the right here is like the actual introduction section for Vertigo. I don't know if you guys have seen that Alfred Hitchcock movie, but I really like what he did, and also his spirit, which is like, we have cool technology, let's make cool shit, And I think that actually drives in like what we do today. Today, graphics programming is a little bit more updated. We do use what Maltik mentioned before, which is called shaders. And shaders are basically GPU programs. So as you have like a typical CPU running in your phone, you also have a graphics processing unit, right? There's like different kinds of shaders, like vertex, pixel, compute shaders. You can do a lot of crazy stuff. For example, Maltik was working with the how you call it, the tessellation shaders for doing all of this kind of stuff with terrain. That's kind of cool. And then, as I said, there's pixels. And I just want to reiterate that screen pixels is not the same as computer pixels. And I'm gonna say something now that might blow your mind, maybe not, I'm not sure. But every pixel on the screen is running a tiny program right now, maybe more than one. So the thing is that like, people just seem to assume that what you see on the screen just happens. It's like some kind of computer magic, and if there's a window around, you have a window. And that's not true. Like, there's actually like this whole discipline called graphics programming, which is based around that, around the representation of like the science of visual representation. And that goes in many different ways. That goes from like the study of math to the study of physics to the study of like light transport simulations, like fluid simulations. So it's a really nice like field. If you guys are interested, it's like a shit ton of books. But I think it's important to know that like things look in screens in a certain way because someone did it, and that's really powerful because that means that you can make them look not that way, which is kind of cool. For example, this is like a really basic example of what a shader is. This is like just a sine wave representation. Someone asked like, how do you write these formulas? Well, you guys have done math in high school. I would assume that like sine wave, you know how it goes, right? Like you have in the UV are the screen coordinates, then you add the time, which does this kind of animation stuff, and then you have the sine of the coordinates multiplied by some numbers that make it look nice, right? That's what it is, and that basically represents every pixel in this thing is running that program. And it's like, okay, but like how do you can do nice stuff with that? Well, I mean, if you take it to the next level, that on the right is the actual program to run that thing, which is like a fully simulated environment with like atmospherical scattering, like procedural snow, procedural slopes, I don't know, erosion, like many different stuff that come together. And this is like the fact that you can do that in a machine right now, it's crazy. And I think it's cool that we all know that. And if you're an artist and you're a curious artist, you should do the same as John Whitney, in my opinion, and say, we have really cool technology. Let's maybe try to explore what's possible with this and move it forward. And then, that was the educational talk, I'm sorry. But I'm gonna move forward on what I'm doing right now. As I said, like, I'm by heart like a software engineer. I wouldn't call myself like an artist so much, although I have a background in games, which are an art form, in my opinion. But I've actually started, like, since I joined Factory, like a few months ago, experimenting a little bit with this idea that was presented to you, like what's possible with like the actual hardware that we have and the actual media that we can input. And this is a project that I'm doing with a friend of mine called Alex. He's not here, but he's an amazing guy. Called Hedron, which is a 3GS-based VJ live performing tool. So it's similar to Touch Designer. You can do like live visuals, but it's based on 3GS, which is like a really popular JavaScript framework a lot of people use, which in my opinion is amazing because it takes something that is simple and some people can already use it, and you can make something cool out of it, which is really nice. And by the way, I'm doing a show with Robert on the 31st. We're going to be doing some live visuals, so sorry for the shout out.
Thank you.
And right now, in my more like of my experimentation work that I'm doing, I'm trying to, I don't know, kind of reach this idea of like digital physicality, which is to reproduce like physical phenomena that happens in the real world, like I don't know, light dispersion, which is in some of the examples that I have back there, and try to bring them into like the digital world, and then bend them and shape them and like do crazy stuff so it attracts you in a realistic manner. So it's like, oh, it's like a crystal, and then you can do crazy things with it, which I think is always like surprising and interesting. I'm also really exploring like non-conventional inputs. Like I have one installation back there which has like a bass guitar, and it's like just do stuff with the bass guitar. Like sometimes we understand computers only work with like keyboard, mouse, and maybe touchscreens, but that's not so true at all. Like anything that inputs like or outputs a digital signal, you can use to drive whatever kind of installation you want. And I think it's a powerful idea, and we should explore that a little bit more. And also destroying preconceptions about computers. I think that's kind of what I was saying through, right? That like we think things are supposed to work in a certain way because we've had these devices for years now, and that's not it. Like you can actually get pretty crazy with things. So this is one of a small experiment that I did like a few years ago. I wanted to do a real-time implementation of like multifaceted refractions, and also there's like light dispersion in the shader too, which basically is this whole effect that you have of like light spreading in different colors when it actually goes through a material that has a different refraction ratio index. It's just nice. I've actually used it in some of the installations back there. This is also one of the installations that I have there. Basically, this is a fluid simulation of the Navier-Stokes equation, which defines incompressible fluids such as water and stuff. And basically what this means is that interacting with a touchscreen, which is something which is, I don't know, we use to move windows and stuff like that, you can get the tactile feeling of interacting with water, and also visualize in a really nice way by using the spectral color range, which is the colors that go from infrared to ultraviolet, which is every visible color in the physical world. And this is just a small example of also what you can do when you take that physical simulation and apply it to something a little bit more abstract. This is an example that I did for my website, which I thought it was kind of nice, and I don't know. As I said, that's kind of it. You can find me on Twitter and in my webpage. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Needs anybody any direct questions for Andrés? Because he's the question man. We need to give him some questions back.
Yeah, and question myself.
We have a question in the back. 1 second.
First of all, thanks so much for your presentation. I wanted to ask, for tech professionals who feel like they've always had a bit of a creative streak to them, what sort of advice would you give to them, for them to be able to give that catalyst to kickstart, like merging both of those pursuits?
I mean, for me, to be honest, I would say that like it would be great for me to dedicate myself to this like full time, but it's not really realistic. So if you're like have the ability to, I don't know, have some jobs, save some money, and like maybe save like a tiny bit of time in your week to actually put some effort into this, that's actually what I did. Like I was working with a company in Berlin called Here Maps like a few months ago as a freelancer, and I was just like, I shouldn't be spending so much time with this. So I allocated some of my week to random projects. I started working on that, and that's great. And also, maybe 2 more things quickly. First of all, find the right people, find the right space. I'm super glad that I hanged out here in the Creators Lab because, I don't know, so other people were asking me questions, and that pushes you a lot. And just, also, I don't know, keep it to what you know. So if you're like a JavaScript developer, or you're like a... What is it?
I do that as a matter of fact.
Exactly. So if you're a web developer, like you can do a lot of crazy stuff with a browser. Like yesterday, I created like an amp with the Web Audio API, like super easily. Basically, I mean, it's not the best amp, but it's an amp, and it's like maybe don't try to go like too far. Like take what you have, which is probably a lot, and try to shape it into something. I would say.
Thank you. Any more questions before we? Okay.
Is the Instagram that correct?
No, that's not my Instagram, that's my Twitter, sorry for that.
Okay.
But if you go into my website, which is the one, on the bottom you will have an Instagram.
Because I found another, it's XYZ _IMS.
No.
It exists, but it exists, you know. Anyway, so my question is like, I was wondering, because you work with interactivity, did you also work like, for example, with sensors, with dancers, or like more, also like a Mautic?
Yeah.
Mautic? Because it seems like you probably work already with some theater or dance performances, maybe in the past, but do you?
Not really, to be honest. As I said, like this kind of artistic efforts have started for me.
Would be interested in?
Yeah, definitely. I'm always open to anyone who wants to collaborate. That's cool. I've been exploring a little bit with the depth sensors and infrared sensors that you can do with a Kinect.
Volumetric camera?
Yeah, well, not diametric, but like just depth camera.
Yeah.
But I'm open to, because it's what I was saying, like any kind of input to a computer can be turned into something. So.
That's, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So.